Section 0 of The Honour of the Gout. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Alister. The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. Title, Dedication, and Advertisement. The Honour of the Gout, or a rational discourse demonstrating that the gout is one of the greatest blessings which can befall mortal man, that all gentlemen who are weary of it are their own enemies, that those practitioners who offer at the cure are the vainest and most mischievous cheats in nature, by way of a letter to an eminent citizen, wrote in the heat of a violent paroxysm, and now published for the common good, by Philander Misaurus. London. Printed for J. Roberts near the Oxford Arms in Warwick Lane, 1720. To all the numerous offspring of Apollo, whether dogmatical sons of art or empirical by blows, to all the pharmaceutic residentiaries, in town or city, also to all the strolling practitioners and impostors. Gentlemen, if this letter shall happen in any measure to spoil your trade, heaven make me thankful, for well I know that yours is the very trade of two famous princes, that have, by one method or other, rid out of the way very great numbers of men. A malefactor condemned to die ought to be free from all manner of insults as he goes to execution. I know it, and therefore do not dedicate this letter to you by way of insult, but friendly to mind you that since your unrighteous trade is broke, or breaking, you would timely bethink yourselves what honest employment you may be fit for. If you'll take my advice, you should travel, for to your sorrow you have known an overgrown farrier from abroad make a great doctor here in England. Why should you not make as good farriers abroad as they do doctors here? This is certain. Like true farriers, you have prescribed to many a weak man a medicine for a horse. So then, for the materia medica 'tis the same. Nothing will be troublesome or uneasy to you in your new profession, but that you shall never get as much by practising on the spavin as the gout. But you must be content with less earnings. What? You can't in conscience expect as much for killing a horse as a man. To this change of your profession, not only the discovery of frauds and the dangers thereof, but also the name of your great patron Hippocrates invites. What are you more than he? Come, te noma est technoin, better my psite. Change name and profession, better a murrain among horses than a plague among men. Having thus obliged you, gentlemen, in an epistle dedicatory, by minding you of the imminent decay of your practice upon human bodies, and teaching you how to make the best of a bad market by trying experiments upon horseflesh, I hope you will make me that grateful return as to prevent the obligation I confer on you from turning to my prejudice. Therefore, if any gouty person that may happen to malign you shall object against me, and say I had better have made a forlorn regiment of you, and sent you to have been knocked over the head in Flanders, than given you a licence to kill horses, remember to say this for yourselves and for your benefactor, that when the devils were ejected out of human bodies, they were suffered to enter into swine. Upon the first fit of the gout. Welcome, thou friendly earnest of fourscore, thou that alone hast got the sovereign power, to attend the rich, unenvied by the poor. Thou that dost Asclepius deride, and that over his gallipots in triumph stride. Thou that art used to attend the royal throne, and underprop the head that wears a crone. Thou that doest oft in privy council wait, and guard from dozy sleep the eyes of state. Thou that doest oft in pampered prelates' toe, emphatically urge the pains below. Thou that upon the bench art feated high, and warnest the judges how they tread awry. Thou that art always half the city's grace, and addest to the solemn noddle solemn pace. Thou that art used to fit on ladies' knee, to feed on jellies, and to drink cold tea. Thou that from velvet slippers never art free, whence is this unsought honour unto me? Whence can this mighty condescension flow? to visit my poor tabernacle. Oh. Thus Jove vouchsafes on Ida's hill to fit, at poor Palaemon's cot to take a bit. Pleased with his poor but hospitable feast, Jove bade him ask, and granted his request. So do thou grant, for thou art of race divine, begot of Venus by the god of wine. My humble suit, either to give me store, to entertain thee, or never see me more. Advertisement. This piece, as appears from many passages in it, was wrote towards the beginning of the reign of King William. The author is since dead. End of section 0. Section 1 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen. The Honour of the Gout. Sir, I owe you a greater observance, more profound respects, and hearty thanks for favours to which I had not the merit to pretend, than I am able to express, should I make words and phrase my study. But I am not like to do that at present, for you have used me so of late that you tempt me to think you are going to put as much despite into one scale as ever you put obligation into the other. Why, sir, I am informed that your worship, not having a right sense of things, nor the fear of God before your eyes, should, to the disgrace of your own virtue, give your tongue the liberty, in an open coffee-house, to speak ill of the gout. Of the gout, sir. Which, if you look on as a disease, you ought welcome, as the most useful and necessary thing that could have happened to you. But if you consider, as becomes you, then, with me, you must reverence it, as a power divine, on whose sacred, internodal altars I each spring and fall at least will sacrifice morbific, painful loads of matter tartarus, with recrements of nervous juice impregnate. Would you yourself, sir, patiently endure the honour of our great master, our rightful and lawful king, to be contemptuously reflected on by error, a recreant piece of conscientious priestcraft that infests the town? Then why should I not be concerned for the honour of my great master, the gout, who claims not, 'tis true, the power he exercises over me by any hereditary pretence, but from an origin altogether as sacred and indisputable, viz. Some voluntary acts and deeds of my own? Yet you could say that when the Almighty God had, out of rude chaos, built this goodly frame of nature, which we see, and formed his noble creature, man, he indulged the devil to create some one thing, and his damned envy gave being to the gout. Now I am confident, sir, and have great authorities for it, that if the devil ever created anything, it was the doctor, of whom since you have made so much use. I know not, but it may be rationally inferred that you have dealt with the devil. The gout, sir, whether you know it or no, was postnate to the creation, and younger something than the fall of man, who, having incurred the sentence of death, the friendly gout was sent in mercy down from heaven to lengthen wasting life. By my consent, you should never have the gout, who have no more consideration in you than to blaspheme it. I always took your worship for a person the most accomplished our city has ever bred. I imagined that you thoroughly understood most things, but it could never enter into my head that you should fall into so profane an error as to think, into so rash a practice as to speak ill of the gout. But, because my soul has been full of humble deference to your worship, I will be at some pains to recover you to your right mind, and a due veneration of that friendly demon, the Gout. For though you may value yourself, and reckon that no girding satirist can take up the old proverb against you, and say that you are afraid of your friends when there are none near you, yet, what is worse, they may reproach you with this disgraceful truth: you are afraid of your best friend when he kisses your very feet. Now, upon this subject, having no need to use the inveigling arts of oratory, I shall not, with tropes and metaphors, with flourishes and amusements of insinuating words, seek to divert your mind and cheat your judgment, but to make my work the shorter, and do it effectually, press you with plain demonstration. Your error, sir, was this, that the devil created the Gout. I prove he did not. You know, sir, that the man of sin, the son of perdition, best known by the name of Antichrist, is the Pope. You must not doubt of this, for, till the days of that excellent prelate, Archbishop Laud, the whole stream of Protestant interpreters gave it so. A learned chaplain of his has put that character upon the Grand Signior, and a famous annotator has taught Oucher to split Antichrist into Simon Magus and his Gnostic followers. I must confess I have a sort of a respect to these authorities, but the body of modern dissenters, and the general agreement of interpreters Whig and Tory in the age before, weighs them down. Take in, then, the lay mobility of the nation, who should know something, but are confident of nothing more than that Antichrist is the Pope. And your worship will agree with me that that's the plain truth of the matter. By the way, I will observe one thing, which will not trouble my demonstration, but will let your worship see how ready I am to allow you in your speculation all that can be reasonably desired. A celebrated author notes that the ancients described Antichrist by the phrase of prototokos te satane, the firstborn of the devil. Supposing now that the devil created something, as you contend, you see it could not be the Gout, at least not if he'll be judged by the fathers, but rather Antichrist, or the Pope. I desire your worship to consider next that you shall not read in Platina, or Nufrius, or any later anti-Christian biographer, that ever fettered toe of the Pope was visited with beneficial Gout, but, had so great a blessing been created by the devil, as you fondly imagine, the devil had for certain bestowed it on his firstborn, the Pope. Nay, and then, too, instead of the filthy scrutiny through the porphyry chair for old and wasted testicles, the deacon had only pulled off the stocking of the elect, and the ratificatory report had been Dominus Noster, Papa Babat Podogram. In short, sir, Antichrist, or the Pope, for they are one and the same, firstborn of the devil according to the ancients, being never favoured with the Gout, it is plain that the devil did not create it, opere Dei DXA, which was the thing to be demonstrated. Having thus, sir, utterly confounded your error, my next labour shall be to instruct you in a sounder persuasion. The Gout was sent in mercy down from heaven to lengthen wasting life. End of section 1. Section 2 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 2. The seat of this friendly demon, by whom every afflicted man receives 1,000 times more benefit than ever Socrates by his seat, I say, is in the nervous parts. He commonly visits the internodia of the bones of the feet, sometimes the hip, the knee, elbow, shoulder, wrist, and ankle. But, to prove its divine original, I should proceed methodically. From his lowest commendations, ascend by 6 just steps, or degrees, until I have raised him above the stars, and ended him among the celestial spirits. To whom, sir, you will then be tempted to offer your orisons in the prescribed form at the end of the old manuscript missal, communicated to me by a learned antiquary, a great collector of those rarities, the form this. Blessed gout, most desirable gout, sovereign antidote of murdering maladies, powerful corrector of intemperance, deign to visit me with thy purging fires, and throw off the tophus injury which I may have suffered by wine and wit. Too hard for the virtue of a devotee upon a holy festival. But fail not thy humble supplicant, who needs thy friendly help to keep his tottering tenement in order. Fail him not every vernal and autumnal equinox. I know some precise doctors are against all invocation of saints. At present I shall not dispute with them, but they must grant me that there's more to be said in justification of such a prayer to the gout than can be said for the offices directed to any other saints not excepting the Virgin. For I defy their worshippers to prove that there has been the tithe of so much good done by them all, as I shall prove has been done by the beneficial gout. I begin at the lowest step, and note, first, the gout gives a man pain without danger. It is possible, I confess, that a sick man, if he were directly asked to declare his sense of the matter, might refuse to acknowledge the benefit of pain without danger. For sickness and peevishness commonly go together. But mind his discourse at another time, when he talks from the heart, and is not upon his guard, then, oh then, pain without danger is a blessed thing. For instance, underline, suffering under a painful, threatening distemper. What's his first question to the physician but this? Doctor, pray be plain with me, and let me truly know what I am to expect. Don't flatter a sick man, but tell me, am I like to recover or no? That pain, you see, which he suffers, does not at all trouble him. He's only afraid that he shall die. Secure him against that danger, and all is well with him. Cut, slash, burn, no pain is grievous, if it promise to set us out of the danger of death. When the other doctor comes, the physician of the soul, I mean, whose coming bodes no good to the body, he tells the decumbent a long story of the pains and misery of life, in order to make his nunc dimittis go down the easier. But that method seldom takes, for not one of 100 is so bad but he's content to live and put the rest to the venture. The fear of death is generally more grievous than all the cruel pains of a wretched life. But, since we must have pain while we live, give me the pain of the gout, which has no danger attending. Here some malevolent adversary may importunely object, did never a man die of the gout? To this I answer, 1. I have not yet affirmed that the gout can make a man immortal, though I will boldly say thus much. It very often keeps a man alive till all his friends are weary of him. But, 2. Should I venture to say that the gout has in itself the power to make a man immortal, it ought not seem so strange, all things being considered. If that be true, which some authors write of noble Paracelsus, he had the secret to make a man immortal, and I would not say he lied, though himself died about 40. For perhaps he did not like his company. But it must be by the way of his discovery to give any man the gout when he pleased. In that I am positive. Here the objector will scornfully put me in mind that gouty persons escape death no more than other men, which is very true, but that's because men are fools, and don't know when they're safe. They must be curing the gout, forsooth, and to that end they deal with the doctor, i.e., with the factor of death, the emissary of hell, the purveyor of the grave, the damned alchemist, good at calcining nothing but living bodies into dust and ashes. Let everyone bear his own burthen. The gout has nothing to do with the carnage of the doctor. All that can be rationally said against the gout is that it does not actually preserve men in spite of their own folly and the doctor's ignorance. And yet there is the Right Honourable Sir R.H. The gout is so salutary to him that 2 Swiss doctors can't dispatch him. What a certain lord would give that those 2 coagulating spirits could remove his honour's gout. But I say, gout, hold thy own, for earth has more need of the cripple than heaven of the saint. And now, sir, let me tell you a story. The famous Willis shall be my voucher, who dissected the body of the reverend, learned, and pious Dr. Hammond, killed purely by his friend, who unhappily taught him a medicine to cure the gout. Upon the success of that medicine, the doctor's old nephritic pains returned, and in a fortnight dispatched him. Therefore, for your own, for your lady's, and for your children's sake, sir, welcome the gout to your house, and shut all your doors against the physicians. I'll warrant you for upwards 100. Lord, how glad shall I be to see 'em pick chalkstones out of your worship's feet some 40 or 50 years hence. By that time you'll have learned so much patience as never to roar for the matter. But if you do roar, for that may be then as you use yourself now, they that look on, if they love life, will envy, not pity you. Indeed, you are already a fit object for the envy of thinking men, for I have heard you confess that yours is an hereditary gout, and that's for the better. An hereditary gout is a far greater happiness than an acquired one, for what a deal of intemperance and amorous excesses might it have cost your worship to have got the gout before 40, whereas now you have the mighty blessing for nothing. Sorte nascendi. It is your birthright, sir. Never think of parting with it. Perhaps you may now be tempted to ask me how I acquired my gout. I shall not be shy to satisfy your curiosity, for I came by it honestly. We scholars have a way by ourselves to come at the blessing, without ever being beholden to the god that cheers the genteel candidate of the gout by day, or the goddess that entertains him on nights. We lead sedentary lives, feed heartily, drink quantum sufficit, but sleep immoderately, so that the superfluities of our sober and grave fullness not exhaling, we very honestly prepare tartarous matter for the gout, for the beneficial gout, which gives us pain without danger. Ascend we now the next step, which advances the honour of the gout. End of section 2. Section 3 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 3. Second, the gout is no constant companion, but allows his patients lucid, joyous intervals. Human nature is so framed that no one thing is agreeable to it always. Therefore it is well for us that the world is so full of changes. The earth we tread on, the seas we sail on, the air we breathe in, the starry firmament expanded round us, have their continual vicissitudes, which all make for our advantage and delight. The body of man is a true microcosm in this respect, for it never continues in one condition, and, upon the same account, his mind is a very fit guest for his body, for, at different times, he thinks and speaks different things. Modo reges atque tetrarchus, omnia magna loquens, modo sit mihi. Sometimes he'd talk of heroes and of kings. In mighty swelling numbers, mighty things. And then again, let gracious fortune give a little meat and drink, enough to live. Let her a coat to keep out cold present. Though 'tis thick and coarse, he'll be content. Mr. Creech. How welcome is a guest that knows when to be gone! But if his stay be longer than ordinary, we are ready to thrust him out of doors. For these and the like considerations, the way of the Gout's dealing with his patients can never be enough esteemed. Whatever some impatient, weak minds may think, 'tis manifest that the Gout, by his coming and going, takes the right course to be very agreeable and obliging. Weak people may curse the Gout, and wish to be wholly excused from his intermitting visits, but I look upon such people as men who are weary of the world, and, being willing to leave it, I grant that they have reason to be angry with the Gout that folds their mortality so fast about them. Your worship has been guilty of impatience, but I hope to recover you to a better mind. I have already shown you that to a wise considerer the absence of danger takes off from the pain of the Gout. But some pain there is, and ought to be, for constant health has no relish. 'Tis an insipid, dull thing. That reverend Calvinist, Dr. Twiss, affirms that 'tis better to be damned than annihilated. I might, I suppose, with less offence, affirm that 'twere better to be dead than never to be sick of the Gout. Nay, this I am sure of, that all the sober and experienced people will be so far from taking offence that I shall have them all on my side, if I venture on that paradox. For how often have I heard a grave adviser, one that had tried health and sickness alternately for many years, tell the robust, young, riotous fellow that he knew not the value of health. No, how should he, having never been sick? But why should his sober adviser press him to be careful of his health? That's the way never to understand the deliciousness of it. By the time he gets the Gout, he'll thoroughly understand the matter, I'll warrant him. Set me two men together, one that never knew pain, and another newly recovered of the Gout. Observe them both narrowly. In the former, perhaps you may perceive an easy, even temper, but the latter is ravished with joys and satisfactions, which, if his tongue does not declare, his hands and feet and gesture shall. Homer says that the beauty of Helen was a prize worth all the blood spilt through the long course of a 10 years' war. Homer would not have redeemed those lives by the least injury to that adorable lady. Such are the lucid intervals between the heart-breaking fits of the Gout, worth all the ravings and roarings which the violent paroxysms force from the tortured patient. All those who would spoil the refined pleasure of his recovery by wishing to have one angry throb, one heavy groan, baited him. Si parvus componere, magna liceret. If we might compare great things with small, the Gout is to health as ham and tongue to wine, or rather as suis psyche to the lovers' congress. Courage, sir, and be advised by me. 'Tis good advice I am giving, and you shall have it gratis. When your foot swells and burns and throbs, banish all foolish sorrow and repining. Instead whereof, let the swelling joys dilate your generous breast, when sharp fermenting juices, not easily miscible, shall meet and, by their furious contest, cause cruel twitchings of your nervous fibres. Comfort your heart, and be extremely pleased, when masculine acerus recrements shall, with female tartarus matter, mix, engender, and beget a tophus mass, when the same tophus mass shall lodge in the internodere of your worship's bones, entertaining you with a rending solution of continuity, then let your soul triumph. But touch not, taste not the crewman emulgent doctor's emulsions, juleps, and epizames, nor let his repercussives, resolvents, catapalms, and anodynes touch you. So let your friend, the gout, take his course and maul you soundly. Oh, so easy, so pleased, so joyous, so happy, so blessed will you be, when the turn of health shall come. Why, sir, you'll be in heaven while you are on earth. You'll be entirely beatified on this side of the grave, and that's more than Solomon has arrived at yet, if you can give any credit to a Catholic painter, for but one half of him is glorified, the other half fries in flames, vexed by tormenting devils, like the noble Shaftesbury in Windsor Hall. Beshrew the painter for his pains. Fast est et, ab hoste docerai. Learn of our common enemy, sir. I fancy the late tyrant solaces his exile with the expectation of a return to trample on the liberties and riot in the blood of heretics. But, before ever that dismal day come, may the gout, my life's kind preserver, and my dear life itself, forsake me. Only I will make it in my bargain. I will not stand to this wish, if my help can contribute anything to oppose his invasion. I am much of the mind, sir, that by what I have said already, you are already becoming a proselyte. But, before I have done with you, you shall choose to part with your eyes rather than your true friend the gout. The mighty blessing, whereof that you may the better understand, mount with me one step higher, and then take notice of this further advantage of the gout. End of section 3. Section 4 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 4. Third, the gout presents you with a perpetual almanac, and, that it may never be out of the way, but ready always for your worship's use, safely deposits it in the internodia of your bones. Barometers, thermometers, and other inventions of men, not yet perfect masters of their art, serve more for the delight than the use of the curious. But the useful pains of the gout give your honour trusty prognostics of the seasons. As often as a moist constitution of the year, south or north winds, or snows are at hand, you predict those things from the assessors of your pains, and by the absence of your pains you foreknow the contrary. So, one way or the other, your bone almanac serves for all changes. Our lilies and gadberries foreknow when it shall be rain-like or snow-like, but when your honour foreknows by means of the gout, does afterwards actually come to pass. Dr. Goad knew more of the stars and their positions than you, but not half so much of their influence. Spinoza will have it that when a Jewish prophet foretold anything, he gave a sign, a present sign, which was a confirmation of his prophecy. You have a sign within you, sir, and are a true prophet all over. Majora animalia dietus viseribus parentum continentur, says Pliny. Nature gives larger-sized animals a longer stay in the womb of their mother. Their mighty limbs and vast frame of body are not so soon fashioned and perfected as is the compendious texture of lesser animals. So is it with the most noble arts and sciences, with the most useful inventions when first brought to light. Every man is taken up with unactive ecstasy and lazy admiration, greatly pleased to be taught and let into the mystery, and as well content to know no more than is taught him. Time passes silently on, and the ages steal away, before there starts up a studious, inquisitive person, who bends his wit to improve the discoveries of his ancestors, and raise them to their just perfection. Now of this observation I am of the mind there is not again in nature so clean an instance as the gout affords us. The gout at first passed for no other but an evil spirit, which an exercising priest attacked with charms, before ever the physician fell foul upon him with poisonous recipes. The physician, purely to force a trade, imposed upon the people that the gout was a disease. Having cheated them with his false opinion, he plagued them with real tortures, all of which he was pleased to christen by the general name of the therapeutic method, in which his barbarous executions thus follow one another. First phlebotomy, then cathartics, emetics, hypnotics, the underline, and all. And while the inside of the poor patient is thus miserably racked and confounded, he daubs the outside with anodyne applications, unguents, and cataplasms. And when all is done, I'll give them my body to practise on, though I had rather the executioner had it to dispatch outright, if plain cathartic gruel, and not the cataplasm of a fresh cow turd, do not work greater wonders than anything they can pretend to. From Germany, nay, from beyond the Alps they come, with hard names, exotic cant, and baneful poison, to allay the paroxysm and remove the procataxis of the gout. But, God be thanked, their practice decays, and must do more and more every day, now that it is so plainly discovered that the gout needs no remedy, not being in truth, and proper speaking, a disease, but a sovereign antidote against the most dangerous diseases, and therefore the people of the best sense are content to let it take its course, and not only so, but they are proud to publish the satisfaction that they take in one or other advantage which the gout affords them. For instance, as to the foreknowledge of the weather, the gout never twitches their nerves, but they will be telling others what changes are near at hand. Now, that which I propose is this, that people should not think it enough to know thus much of the gout, but study to improve and increase their knowledge. For no doubt, more may be made of this blessing than ever yet was done by the happy man that has enjoyed it the longest. I am persuaded that if the fortunate patient would be at pains to observe all the motions of the gout, in his pinching, smarting, galling excesses, in his gnashing, stabbing, burning paroxysms, in his evacuating, tender, remitting recesses, he might quickly come to wind a storm so long before that in a short time no owners would think their ship safe but with a gouty master, nor would any experienced seaman that wanted a ship offer himself to the merchants but upon crutches. Possibly some nice person may object that 'tis a sad thing to be a cripple. I reply, in lameness 2 things are to be considered, the unsightly gait and the afflicting pain. As to the unsightly gait, set the Italian proverb against it. He knows not Venus in her perfect sweetness, who has never lain with a lame mistress. And Montaigne tells us that the same is said of men as well as women, for the queen of the Amazons answered the personable Scythian who courted her to love, Eosa Corlos oipe, lame men make the best gallants. In that female republic, to prevent the dominion of the males, they lamed them, arms and legs, in their infancy, believing that they would be rather the better for the use which they should make of them thereafter. Montaigne gives a philosophical reason for the advantage accruing by lameness, either to men or women, viz., the legs and thighs are not receiving their due aliment. It falls out that the genital parts above are the fuller, better supplied, and more vigorous. 2. As to the pain proceeding from lameness, I will not, to diminish that, tell the objector a long story from the reasonings of Aristotle, or the practice of Cato, but only pray him to consider the lower sort of people, who know little of example, and mind as little of precept. Nature is their guide, and this is their familiar practice. They call a tisick, says Montaigne, a cough, the bloody flux no more than a looseness, a pleurisy but a stitch in the side, and as they softly name, so they patiently endure these grievances. If the mercenary adversaries of the gout, the doctors, have any other objections against a bone almanac, besides what I have answered, let them be published. I will fairly and fully answer them also, or renounce my reverence for the gout. Oh, that I had an infallible medicine, which would both certainly and speedily cause the gout. Wine and women are tedious and uncertain ways of purchasing the mighty blessing. I would not doubt but to make more of it than ever Daffy did of his elixir, or any strolling mountebank of his nostrum. The fair for Rider's Almanac, Partridge's Almanac, Underline's Almanac, lasts but 1 month in the year, but I might vend gout almanacs and bone almanacs all the year round. Here I suspect that the malevolent doctors that get their living by their mischievous craft in practising on the gout will object that all which I have hitherto urged in its commendation has a very great allay, for though it is not dangerous, yet it is painful. Though the patient has lucid intervals, yet he has violent paroxysms. Though he be a prophet, yet the spirit which inspires rends him. But of these objectors I would fain know whether wholly precious enthusiasm be not a furious ungovernable impulse, whether lucid intervals are not more eligible than a constant weak and sullen light, whether pain without danger is not better than ease without security. I am of the opinion that our compositions are no more able to endure pure and unmixed felicities than Semele, the half-gone mother of Bacchus, to abide the warm congress of the Olympic Jove, circled with all his glories. Yet to silence envy itself, the next step we ascend, we shall see the gout dealing to his patients a benefit so wondrous, refined, pleasant, and useful, that he must be a very dull creature that can seriously think on this, and not passionately wish, deliberately consider it, and not heartily labour by all honest ways and means to deserve the gout. End of section 4. Section 5 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 5. 4. Gouty persons are most free from the headache. The reason of which is this. The heavy recrements of blood and nervous juice always fall downwards to the gouty joints. The nerves of the head, the fibres and the membranes, whereof there are many placed above and under the skull, the two meninges, the tunicles of the nerves, the pericranium, and other periostea, the muscles, the panniculus carnosus, and lastly the skin itself, are all freed from a world of torment by means of the medicinal gout, which attracts to exterior remote parts vicious humours of various denominations, and there sets them on fire, wastes and evacuates them. Persons much favoured by the gout, upon every long absence of that best friend of theirs, whether occasioned by unknown accidents, or unwise recourse to the mischievous tampering of a wicked doctor, exchange their freedom from the gout for a pain more intense and dangerous. But of all other pains they are extremely subject to the headache. Something of a cloud, more or less, always hangs over their brain, but as soon as ever the gout pleases, forgiving them their ingratitude to revisit them, presently the weather breaks up, the nerves are relaxed, the fibres unmolested, and the membranes and muscles recover their right tone, while the inimicous contesting particles, thrown off by the boiling blood and turgid nervous juice, fall down to the remote parts of the body. And then the understanding grows clear, the thoughts brisk and active, and the patient is fitted, whatever his station and employment is in the world, to do the duty thereof better than ever. I have been told of several sea captains, and I have reason to believe the relater, who, during a fit of the gout, happening to meet the enemy, bestirred themselves with a vigour that forgot their pain, and gave their orders with a steadier presence of mind than they were ever masters of before. I have the honour to be known as a person of quality, who has obliged the age with several instructive pieces, who never published a sorry trifle, nor ever anything so absolutely perfect, useful, and entertaining as when he lay under a course of the gout. Then would he dictate like an angel, or, which is much the same, like a man inspired, to his ravished amanuensis. That amanuensis of his has told me, though he loved his master very well, yet he was always sorry for his recovery, for then his strength failed him, and he was no more than another writer. I mean a writer of the first rank, though. I know nothing that a man, when he enjoys the gout, is unfit for, but jumping, running of races, or football. The Amazons, if they are not belied, coveted to admit strangers flagrante paroxysmo. Had Montaigne ever met with the MS, whence I have the notice, he would have given us a philosophical reason for it. The gout being thus beneficial, I bless myself to think that any patient should be so much his own enemy as to be weary of it, any doctor so much an enemy of mankind as to offer it the cure. But cure it they can't, whatever they pretend, unless they kill the patient. For my part, I know of no difference in the earth between a doctor of physic and a tinker, save that the doctor has more of the tinker, and the tinker more of the doctor in him. For the tinker eventually stops that particular hole which he is hired to stop, though he makes two other for it. But the doctor does but disturb the gout which he undertakes to cure. And when the vicious humours of the body are not suffered to have their course to the exterior remote parts, there to be sacrificed on the internodal altars of the gout, they revert with fury and indignation, dangerously assault the victuals, diffuse their venom all over the viscera, corrupt the stomach, but more especially affect the head with violent pains, which are often followed by dangerous swoonings, a vertigo, a failing of memory, nay, and sometimes a downright delirium. Thus physicians cure their patients of the gout. Then doubly blessed are the poor and needy, who, when they have the gout, and do not understand their own happiness, cannot be at the charge to get rid on it by a cure of the doctors. Nay, beside the mischievous consequences of their meddling, their very meddling itself is a sorer pain than the gout 1,000 times. So that man's intellectuals must not be right, who would not wish to have his headache cured by the gout rather than by the doctor's methods, i.e., by being purged and blooded, cupped and fluxed, stifled with spirit of hartshorn and soot, drenched with cephalic juleps, and waters cold as those that extinguished the vital heat of that renowned, thrice illustrious hero, hight old Simon the King. The gout's a specific, a single, proper, and effectual remedy for the headache. By a strong revulsion it attracts morbific matter from the nobler parts, and ever while you live, say I, keep pain from your head and sorrow from your heart. The honest old beldam made sport for her neighbours when she applied the clister to her forehead, the part affected. Again, when her neighbours turned up her blind side and played the pipe at her Virgin Avenue, that was a jest to her. "Marry, Gap," quoth she, "'tis the upper end that aches, and you give the physic to the lower." But the clister was a good remedy for the headache, though planted at distance, and so the gout. How necessary a friend to the head the medicinal gout is, keeping it easy, clean, and free from all morbific matter which disturbs the brain. We might partly guess from the subtle observation of the famous Confucius upon gouty persons, which is communicated to us by one of the chastest historians among the voracious emissaries. For the Chinese are blessed with the gout as well as the Europeans. "It is possible," said the wife of the Mandarin, "for a lame, gouty person to be a knave. Even in our own country have I known some such. But whoever knew a gouty cripple, that was a fool." In a book of that great master of morals and politics, presented by a Mandarin of Confucius's own race to a learned Jesuit who has enriched the King of France's library with it, but I suppose that the book was there reposited since a certain person finished his travels, these further remarks are delivered. Natural fools never acquire the gout. The sons of gouty persons are defended from dullness and folly by the sins of their parents. Or, if in their minority their understandings happen to lie a little backward, they shall no sooner enter their gouty inheritance, but a bright illumination brings the same forward. Whatever a man's natural powers are, they are so improved by the gout, so refined, so heightened in the paroxysm, that I am almost tempted to call it a sort of natural inspiration. Facile est inventus adire. What the noble Confucius has admirably well observed of the gout, viz. That it is a perfect deletory of folly, prompts me to think that it would be worth inquiry whether the gout is not as effectual against madness. And we may reasonably believe that it is so, if upon examination it should be found that there are no gouty people in Bedlam. And then, for the recovery of those poor creatures to their wits again, it will not need much consideration whether they ought to be excused the hard blows which their barbarous keepers deal them, and the therapeutic method of purging, bleeding, cupping, fluxing, vomiting, clistering, juleps, apozemes, powders, confections, epithemes, and cataplasms, which the more barbarous doctors torment them, and instead of all their learned tortures, indulge, for a time only, a little intemperance, as to the wine, or women, or so, or the scholar's delight of feeding worthily and sleeping heartily, whereby they might get the gout, and their madness were cured. Many and great are the advantages which accrue to mortal man from the gout, as cannot but sufficiently appear to your worship from what I have in running haste observed. But far more numerous and unconceivably vast are the improvements which a man worthy of the gout and sensible of his happiness might, with attentive care and sedulous observance, make. Yet I shall not insist on conjectural topics to do justice to so effectual a promoter of the safety of human life, but proceed on those benefits which are the objects of sense, so that if there shall be any person that shall think or speak ill of the gout, he must be one that does not desire or deserve to live. It is a lofty height to which I have advanced, your worship. 4 steep ascents you have already climbed, but the honour of the gout, caput inter nobila condit, can your head bear to mount a 5th? But why do I ask that question? The gout itself will enable you. End of section 5. Section 6 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 6. 5. The gout preserves its patients from the great danger of fevers. Gouty persons, by reason of a fixed discracy of the blood, are not obnoxious to fevers. As they live free from the dreadful pains of the headache, so likewise from the scorching heat of fevers. Everyone knows that a fever is a high disorderly motion, or overboiling of the blood, which seldom or never happens to gouty persons, because the malignant recurrements of the blood and nervous juice, which occasion fevers, are continually deposited in the joints of gouty persons, are there imprisoned, watered, and consumed by the purging, healing, cleaning, sanative fire of the burning gout. There is a natural motion and heat in the blood, depending partly on its proper crassus and constitution, for being composed of spirit, salt, and sulphur, principles vigorous and active. It spontaneously grows turgid and tumultuous, like generous wine in a narrow vessel pent, and partly to the ferment implanted in the heart, which rarefies the liquor passing through its channels, and forces it to rise with effervescence frothy. The preternatural ebullition of the blood is caused either by some extraneous heterogeneous mixture, or from the immoderate exaltation of its own natural spirit or sulphur, which when it happens, presently a high and quick pulse follows, the blood, like a sulphurous liquor taking fire, diffuses its burning heat all over the body. The vast Sicilian chasms, which vomit flaming heaps of matter, sulphurous and combustible, what are they but nature's emblems of a burning fiery fever? And when the poet's fable, that haughty Typhoeus, big Eryx, and bold Enceladus, deep buried in the earth by angry Jupiter, belch out those fires which waste the country and fright the inhabitants, what mean they to denote but the restlessness of strenuous heroes, for want of the gout to withdraw the feverish fuel, frying in flames merciless and destructive? Methinks I pity the young and healthy, whose blood flows temperately, and never knew disorder. I pity them, I say, not for their present ease, but because of their imminent danger. For when a royal son of France blazes and perishes in flames, painted by brave Russell's masterly hand, when a vanquished admiral shifts off in boat inglorious, a king of equal valour, from a safe station, all the while beholding the monsieur's prudent care to preserve a great commander, when a haughty mareschal is beat out of the strongest bulwark that fenced his master's treacherous rapine, and, to induce that master of his, for once, to keep the cartel, can, in spite of all his blustering, part with his sword, when rebel invaders are disappointed, and execrable assassins punished, at such tempting occasions as these, who can forbear a rightful, lawful, and brimful glass? Yet on so solemn a festival, if the healthy gives nature but a fillip, it may perchance to throw him into a fever, and that fever perchance to cost him his life. Whereas the man that's obnoxious to the gout cheerfully ventures the duty of the day, well knowing that when the worst comes to the worst, 'tis but a roaring purgatory some 40 days or so, and by that time the gout has wasted and cleansed off the tartarous recrements of undigested Philander. Who knows but good news may come to make another holy day? Purgatory, which cleanses the souls of the departed from their filth, which sets them out of the danger of the lake, and renders them, like burnt tobacco pipes, clean and pure, and fit for paradise, is a true picture of the fire of the gout, which spends the morbific matter that might otherwise throw the body into a hellish fever. Indeed, infidels and heretics may object and say that perhaps purgatory is but a false story. But no matter for that, for grave authors teach that a false story may be a true picture, and serve to illustrate, as necessary, a doctrine, as that of purgatory. But in this I am positive, that neither a false story nor a true one can illustrate a more infallible maxim than this, that the purging fires of the gout withdraw the fuel from the destructive fires of burning fevers. Those learned and worthy authors that write of devils and spirits, and know the natures and orders of them as perfectly as the heart can wish, tell us that there be two sorts of them, white and black, good and bad. So is it certainly with diseases. The gout, if it be lawful to call it a disease, is a good and useful disease, a white devil. The fever, a bad and hurtful disease, a black devil. The devil of a disease, or a disease that is the devil, whom if ever the physician casts out, I'll swear it is by compact. Whereas the gout is an honest febrifuge, the operations thereof natural and intelligible, something painful indeed, but there's no magic in them. By the way, if the physician cures or casts out black diseases or devils, by compact with black devils, may it not be said to be a double wickedness? For I took it to be the Roman priest's ungodly office, with rumbling exorcisms to eject them. But this is the fault also of other dealers. There's nothing more common among them than to encroach upon one another's trade. Could tyrants inflict fevers, they would never make use of the rack or gibbet, axe or unrighteous judge, unless the object of their fate were an honest, gouty fellow. For the gout would soften the feverish infliction, as the popish printer did his father confessor's penance when he boiled the peas which he was required to put in his shoes before he took his walk. There is not, certainly, a severer torment than a burning fever, nor a more sovereign antidote than the medicinal gout. So that is a truth, clear as the sun. If more people had the gout, fewer would die of a fever. Having placed these things in so clear a light, I am strongly persuaded that not your worship only, but the generality of the age, will set their prejudices aside, and yield to the happy force of the many useful truths, which, by the bright illumination of a violent gout paroxysm, I have here discovered. So that hereafter, instead of the old parting compliments, "Save you, sir, God keep you in good health," I question not, but we shall say, "The gout defend you, sir, God give you the gout." For we ought not to hope for a blessing without the means. To wish a man the gout is to wish him that which withdraws fuel from diseases and preserves life at so cheap a rate. It costs a man not a penny more than patience. It has been the opinion of some writers that none can be saved who die of the plague. But in judging the future state of others, I think it best to venture being mistaken on the charitable side. And therefore I would sooner believe that none can be damned who have the gout. And I must tell your worship that I have known a less probable sign of salvation given by a dissenting rabbi to his hearers. When Mercury, by the mighty power of a verse, borrowed from that great architect Homer, heaved up the aspiring mountain Pelion, and piled it entire on heaven-shouldering Ossa, and then helped Charon up to the top, the poor old ferryman complained that the distance from the earth was so great that he could not see what was done there. I am much afraid, sir, that this uppermost step of ascent on which I am going to seat your worship, that you may have a full view of the amazing excellence of the medicinal, useful, health-restoring, soul-enlivening gout, will place you at such a vast distance above the terrene things and notions that you will not be able to discern the true proportion of that benefit which crowns the honour of the gout, at least not so plainly as I could wish. End of section 6. Section 7 of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alister. Letter to an Eminent Citizen, Part 7. 6. To crown the honour of the gout, it is not to be cured. The gout defies all your gross gelenical methods, and all your exalted chemical preparations, for the conjunct causes thereof, as the learned Willis confesses, lie in parts so very remote that the virtues of no medicines can reach them, and heaven be praised for it. For why, sir, would you cure, as you call it, the gout, which gives you pain without danger, a better taste of health by an acquaintance with pain, a knowledge of future things, freedom from the headache, and from fevers? Bless us, that any man should wish to be rid of the gout, for want of which he may become obnoxious to fevers and headache, be blinded in his understanding, lose the taste of his health, and the security of his life. I hope you and I, dear sir, shall be better advised, and to show that we are so, and at the same time to set the world a good example, I hope we shall neither of us tamper with the doctor for the cure of the gout, which really and truly is incurable, unless the patient be to be killed, which is what the doctor's medicines aim at, perhaps not what he directly aims at himself, for his heart is chiefly upon his fee, his prayers that his patient neither die nor recover. At least not die while he's worth a penny, but when his last penny is spent, then the miserable creature is forsaken, like the poor woman in the Gospel, and may perish for all him, unless heaven has a miracle in store for a poor sinner that has been tormented by a nasty D_, before his time. But left I should be in thought in vindication of the honour of the gout, too severe against the pretenders to cure it. I shall argue against them from their own confessions. We may say of every medicaster, whether a college or a stage doctor, habemus consitentem riem. The whole clan of them are homicides by their own confession. Other wicked people put on the guise of honesty for the better perpetration of their crimes, but physicians own the R_Y of their art. Indeed, to save themselves from public infamy, they give this softening turn to their scandalous cause. The principles of their art, they say, are difficult to be understood and uncertain to be relied on. And then also the temperament of the body on which they practice can be but guessed at. So the success of the most learned practitioner can be but casual. Now that after this these men should be entertained, and so general admittance given to their practice, does evidently prove that the generality of men, when they lose their health, lose their wits together with it. I will allow that it were reasonable for a sick man liberally to part with his guineas for his health, if the doctors that have their money in hand were sure of restoring health, or upon failure would refund. But to pay down ready money for a lottery chance, where 'tis great odds, but the adventurer increases his malady and hastens his death, I, for my part, declare against it, and am persuaded that no one who considers rightly but would keep his money and bear his burthen. A spare and easy diet shall be always my physic, and I will leave it to nature to do her own work. But let us come to some more particular acknowledgments of these deadly enemies of mankind. Galen, that is still revered as a god by modern practitioners, acknowledges it is impossible to find out a medicine that shall not do any great good one way, and not do as much hurt another. The learned Dr. Hammond fatally experienced the truth of this acknowledgment. The medicine which was prescribed him to cure the gout moved the gravel from his kidneys, which being too big to pass the ureters, choked the channel and deprived him of his life that way. Cornelius Agrippa tells us of one Rhasis, a physician of note, who, considering the foolish credulity of patients and the conscientious ignorance of professors in physic, advised that never above one doctor should be made use of at a time, giving this reason, because the mistake of a single man was less dangerous, and I would advise never to use any, for as the mistake of one man is less dangerous than a consult of them, so having nothing to do with anyone is less dangerous than the mistake of one, for nature can commit no mistake, but if not loaded with luxury, not disturbed with physic, will vigorously strive to throw off every noxious disease. Such the gout is not, for nature, throwing off morbific matter to the remoter parts of the body, does designedly beget the gout, and make use of that admirable remedy to cure diseases already gotten, and to prevent others. But it is not mere reason which I rely upon when I advise men to trust nature alone for their recovery, and never go to a physician. I have the greatest authority to support my advice. Asa, in the 39th year of his reign, was diseased in his feet, as I am now, which hinders me from running to my commentators, but I remember the phrase of the Septuagint is emalauisti te podas. His feet were soft and tender, swelled with gout, that must be the meaning, until his disease, gout, was exceeding great. Yet in his disease, on te malamia aute, in the extreme softness and tenderness of his gout, besought not the Lord, but to the physician. I do not see how our doctors of physic can evade the force of this text in defence of their profession, for 'tis a very weak and precarious reply which they make, when they tell us that Asa is blamed not directly for seeking to the physicians, but for not trusting in the Lord when he sought to them. Now, I will grant these gentlemen that it is the duty of patients to trust in the Lord when they seek to the physicians. Nay, it is their duty to trust in the Lord then above any other time, for then they run themselves into those hazards that, if the Lord does not help them, 'tis odds but they miscarry. But I would have these physicians, who make but sorry interpreters of Scripture, to consider that the text sets seeking the Lord and seeking the physicians in opposition to one another, plainly enough implying that the former was his duty, the latter his fault. But our physicians, it seems, would have the sick seek to the Lord and them both, as if the Lord could not do his own work without them. Odi profanum genus. Hence, sir, it is plain to me that they are an order of men that care not much what they say or do to uphold their own honour and keep their ungodly trade a-going. But therefore I would wish all unhealthy people who have bought their misery of the professors, and all honest gentlemen who are preserved by the salutary gout in the land of the living, to prefer a bill in Parliament against this destructive order of men, that by a strong cathartic act they may be purged out of his Majesty's dominions. I will engage that there's never a family in the nation but shall, by this means, besides their health, save their taxes, so that a vigorous war may be continued against France, till the messieurs are not worth a livre, and nobody with us ever the poorer. For such a useful decree, we are not without a precedent in history. The wise Romans under Marcus Porcius Cato banished physicians not only from Rome, but also from Italy, which counsel, it may be reasonably thought, contributed not a little to the increase of their people. For, as where the most lawyers are, there are the most quarrels and contentions, so, where the most physicians are, there are the most funerals. And some say, where the most divines, there the most differences about religion. But that's not the fault of the divines, for if the magistrate would let the strongest party alone, they would force all the rest to be of their opinion. But I'm afraid I forget myself in too long a digression. What I ought chiefly to insist on is the superlative excellence of the gout, which is never to be removed. The fear of losing a blessing takes off from the pleasure of enjoying it. Thieves may plunder your house, age will ruin your beauty, envy may asperse your reputation, bribes corrupt your faith. But the gout is a sure inheritance. Neither thieves nor knaves, neither time nor envy nor anything else can despoil you of it. A man may himself, if he has a mind to it, squander his estate, blemish his comely form, injure his fame, and renounce his honesty, but let him get rid of the gout if he can. That blessing he may take comfort in, being secure that 'tis for his life. They say there's more care and trouble in keeping an estate than getting it. As for the gout, there may be some trouble in getting it, though that is mixed with pleasure too. But no man is put to the least care or trouble for the safe-keeping of the gout. He may endure misery enough indeed if he seeks to the physician for the cure of it. You cannot be always young and handsome, but gouty once and gouty ever. Thence came the proverb, drink the claret and you have the gout, and drink no claret and you still have it. The gout, 'tis true, is the reward of some works, but there's no forfeiting it, and therefore 'tis preferable to a crown imperial. Possibly a wise and worthy person may secure his virtue against dangerous temptations, but then he must be always upon his guard. But let him take as little care of himself as he pleases, he shall never have the less gout for his loose way of living. But possibly it may be objected that the gout, curing other diseases, and not being to be cured itself, becomes an encouragement to intemperance and lust. The lustful and intemperate drink and love on, reckoning that the gout will carry off the evil consequences of wild excess and foolish passion. Now, I will not lie for the gout, as much as I honour it. If it were not for this one abatement, 'twere physic for an angel. But that the reader may not reproach me for a gross philosophical error, I declare that I do not mean for the spiritual substance of an angel, for that, I well know, needs no physic of one sort or other, but for the corporeal vehicle which an angel may chance to assume, which vehicle being rectified by the gout, may, with less trouble, be actuated by the angel. Sir, I thought to have taken a longer view of the excellency of the noble gout from this sublime ascent, which represents it with its greatest advantage, the advantage of being incurable. But alas, the violent paroxysm which I have laboured under for these 3 short days and nights abates. The intenseness of my pains considerably remits, and therefore I am forced to break off abruptly, for I am sensible that no man can do honour to the gout by a just and adequate panegyric, but he that at the time of writing feels it in extremity. Finis. End of The Honour of the Gout by Philander Misaurus.